Hey everyone, it's me, Christine. Me being me on my journey to 50, being fit for 50. Today, I want to talk about mental health. This week, Bell had their yearly Let's Talk campaign on talking about mental health. Sometimes I feel like we just talk to talk. It says, let's talk about it. That's great. Let's open up and not have the stigma and not have, be embarrassed about opening up about mental health. I'm just going to be open and honest. And I haven't even told my family. I've never told my husband that 85% of my life I wanted to kill myself. I wanted to commit suicide due to things that happened to me, due to low self-esteem, a lot of issues that, and up until I'm not even sure when, maybe a few years ago, I stopped. I didn't even realize I had stopped wanting to kill myself. And the only reason I thought about it was because one of my kids' friends, boyfriends, had committed suicide last year, I believe it was. And they were all talking about how they would have never guessed. He seemed so happy. And I actually got angry when they were talking and said, you have no idea what people are going through. You have no idea how people hide things and pretend. And they kind of looked at me funny. And I didn't say anything. I just went, you never know what people are thinking. And it was then I suddenly realized I hadn't wanted to kill myself. I didn't want to commit suicide. I was actually in a good place now. I wasn't thinking of it anymore. I mean, I do still have self-esteem issues, but it's a lot better now than it was back then. But the truth of the matter is, are we just talking to talk? Are we opening up? Then great. Being embarrassed. I'm too embarrassed. I've never told anybody till now. And to open up and talk about it is great. But then we have to go further. I've heard stories of famous actors who have committed suicide who had been to high-paid psychiatrists, and they still committed suicide. So where are we going wrong? We need to help people change their brain. And I didn't know anything about this. Basically, I was told to take my medication for depression and deal with it. And this is probably something that I'm going to have to live with all my life. And they kept giving me antidepressants that made me sick. And I said, these are just making me sick. And they just said, oh, we'll just find one that doesn't make you sick. And then when they did find one that didn't make me sick, it just made me numb. It didn't help with the problem. It didn't help. I didn't feel anything. Okay, I didn't feel sadness, and I didn't feel like crying. Basically, all it did was suppress my feelings. I realized I don't want to do this. I don't want to be a zombie for the rest of my life. So I stopped taking them. And what I found out in the end, and I mean, being a Christian, you start feeling guilty. It's like, I'm a Christian now. Why am I still having these thoughts? Why am I still hurting? And when your young daughter, when she was about the age of 4 or 5, comes up to me and says, "Mommy, how come you're always crying? How come you're always sad? Why are you never happy?" Then you feel guilty, and you learn to hide it, and you learn to act even though the inside of you is being torn apart. When my body started breaking down, I had a nervous breakdown, and that's when they started trying to put me on these antidepressants. Even when I tried to tell close family and friends how I was feeling, I didn't directly say I wanted to commit suicide, but I tried to tell people how I felt. The response I got was, "Oh, you don't feel that way. You can't feel that way. You shouldn't feel that way." Well, then I went into a deeper hole, because now I felt guilty that I shouldn't be feeling this way. And why am I feeling this way? But through the years, I learned that you can change your brain. You can change your thoughts. You can change the way you think. And I really started learning just last year how this works through Dr. Caroline Leaf's book called Switch on Your Brain. And she has been a brain scientist for over 30 years. And I just wanted to read a quick little blurb at the beginning here of what she says about the brain. It says, "It was only a few decades ago that scientists, including those who trained me, considered the brain to be a fixed and hardwired machine. This view saw the damaged brain as incurable. They believed brain damage was hopeless and untreatable, whether the effects were from stroke, cardiovascular event, trauma, brain injury, learning disabilities, PTSD, OCD, depression, anxiety, even aging. All of these causes and conditions conditions were seen as largely irreversible." And then she mentions in the Bible as well, Romans 12:2, "Do not conform to the pattern of this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind." It also says in the Bible, in Proverbs 23:7, that as a man thinks, so is he. So what you think about and what you speak about is what you're going to be. Joyce Meyer, I have many of her books. She has books, one book called Battlefield of the Mind, where she talks about changing your mindset. It's a battlefield in your mind, but you can change it. I like what she says. She says, "Where the mind goes, the man follows." So your mind, this is one of the books, Power Thoughts, that I've read and need to read again. I read a couple of years ago, and it was so good. Even if you listen to a lot of these motivational speakers, they talk about changing your mindset. We can change our minds. It's not about just not thinking the bad thoughts, because what happens is if you're talking about it all the time, you go to a psychiatrist and all you're doing is talking about how you feel depressed, which is good, you open up, but now you got to take the next step and say, how am I going to replace those thoughts with good thoughts, with positive thoughts. And we can do that. And she says here in her book, as we think, we change the physical nature of our brain. As we consciously direct our thinking, we can wire out toxic patterns of thinking and replace them with healthy thoughts. New thoughts networks grow. We increase our intelligence and bring healing to our brains, minds, and physical bodies. It all starts in the realm of the mind with our ability to think and choose our thoughts. It's such a lie that when you say you have depression and anxiety that you'll never change, you just need to medicate it just to keep it down, just to suppress it. That's such a lie. It is such a lie. You can change your brain, and I am proof of that. I changed my mind. I didn't even realize I had changed my mind, but it was because of the Bible and because of verses and because of things I had read. So now I consciously think about what I'm thinking about. You may not be able to control what's coming into your mind because thoughts will just pop up. But you can take those thoughts and replace them with positive thoughts. It's an effort. You have to do it. It's an effort on your part to want to do it. Drugs are not the answer. They may help for a short time, but they're not a long term. The long term is changing your brain and changing your mind. I am in such a better place now than I was before. And I won't lie, there are thoughts that do come into my head. Sometimes they try and rear their ugly head, and I will take them captive and say, no, I don't. My mind is renewed with the right spirit within me. But let's not just talk about it. Let's do something about it. Let's learn to heal our minds, to heal our brains, to think about good thoughts. It's not just about not thinking about thoughts, saying don't think about it, don't think about it, don't think about it, because that doesn't work. You have to take the thought, write it down, put the good thought beside it, and then start reading the good thought and start replacing the bad thoughts with the good thoughts. I know I've been kind of open and honest with you. I'm hoping that my story will encourage you and show you can change. You can change the depression. You can change the anxiety by learning and changing your mind. I encourage you, find books on how to think better. Find books on changing your mind. I know this video is a little longer than I intended, but I'm hoping that someone out there will open up and be heard and to face what they're going through, and that there is hope, and I'm proof of it, that you can change and you can have joy in your life. Doesn't matter how long you've had anxiety or suicidal thoughts or depression, ADHD, you can change. I'm Christine, and this is me being me on my journey to 50, being fit for 50. And I pray you have an amazing, wonderful week.